Hello and welcome to the Story Behind the Stories, your weekly look at the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. Thank you very much for taking a little bit of your time and spending it right here with us on NAC TV. I'm Eoin Devereux, news reporter with the Banner Press, welcoming you to the show, joined this week by owner, operator, publisher, all sorts of different jobs and different hats. He's wearing the brown one today, Ken Waddell. Ken, good to have you here this week.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
That's right, and you're matching up for it quite well because you got
the brown must be spring or fall coming here because we're getting into these earth tone colors here.
That would be nice. It would be a definite nice change of pace from the weather we've had as of late. But let's get into the pages of the paper this week. If you've been a consistent viewer of NAC TV over the last little while, you've most likely seen our lead story. That was the curling, the provincial curling championship that was going on right here in Neepawa at the Yellowhead Centre. It was about 32 of the best and brightest teams in provincial men's curling, all battling it out to be able to see who would represent Manitoba at the Brier, happening in London, Ontario in early March. And I gotta say, Ken, it was an impressive setup. But a setup like that, you see all the quote-unquote glitz and glamour on the TV and whatnot, but you don't see the little things behind the scenes. And there were so many people from our community that were a big part of that this year.
Yeah, they talked about there being 300 volunteers, which I think is probably pretty accurate. It was, you had people doing scoring and serving at the bar and serving in the lunch counter and serving in the hall for the meals and stuff like that. It was all kind of ticket takers, everything there. It was an impressive deal. Not that it hasn't happened before. I think this is the fourth major one in Neepawa, I think, that has been happening. I think the men's have been here twice and the women's now twice as well.
That's right. Had an opportunity to speak with the organizing co-chairs for this specific event. Specifically, it was Scott Newton. Scott Newton took a lot of the media lead. Heather Todoruk was the other co-chair. Heather, I saw throughout the entire event, sort of, both Scott and Heather were putting out the fires as they came along. There were little trips and whatnot that occur, as they do, during an event of this size and this scope. And as Ken said, 300 people to sort of get organized. When you hear that many volunteers, you think, wow, that's a lot. Why would people put in all that time, all that effort towards it? But you got to realize, it's little things as well. Even if you're a volunteer for 2 or 3 hours, little things help when it comes to these types of events, to be able to stage them and put them on successfully. Too many times people will just get it in their head, oh, I don't want to volunteer. I don't want to give up an entire weekend, or I don't want to give up an entire day to something. It's not like that. You've got to realize, and we've talked to Scott about this in several stories we've done on this over the last few months, even if it's an hour, even if it's 2 hours, every little bit helps because it takes some of that pressure off of the organizing committee to be able to sort of focus in turning the entire event into a fabulous display for Neepawa and surrounding area. And quite honestly, Ken, I think they did it.
Well, they did, and I was talking to Heather Todoruk yesterday on some other matters, and talked, of course, a little bit about the curling, and I've talked to some others as well who were involved other years, and as Heather was too. But the consensus seems to be that, Heather's direct words, we maybe left it too long since the last one, because there's a lot of people who aren't involved there, or they may have moved away or whatever, or gotten old enough that they don't feel they can volunteer anymore. And she says maybe 5 years would be better. You don't want to burn out your volunteer base, but also a better chance of remembering how to do it.
Yeah, and, exactly.
So I wouldn't be surprised if we have an event like this back 5, 6, 7 years from now again. Maybe the ladies will come back, or might be the men's again, who knows. But that was one aspect. And then the other was that a tremendous, it remains to be seen what the final finances on this will be, but it's a big boost to the Neepawa Curling Club and to Neepawa's Yellowhead Centre for fundraising, because these things make money.
Yep.
And you can tell by the amount of people there, and even the Calcutta, a percentage goes to the organizing committee. The Calcutta was $30-some thousand, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
And that's a significant amount of money.
The interesting thing as well is when you see it in a facility such as the Yellowhead Center, because last time it was held in Neepawa, I wasn't here in Neepawa. I was working in Portage La Prairie. But while I was working in Portage La Prairie, there was a major curling event that took place there. I believe it was the Scotties at the time, and it was the exact same setup. There's a difference, though. It's these subtle differences between a place like Stride Place in Portage La Prairie, which is much larger, which is much newer, and the Yellowhead Center, which is 50 some odd, coming up on 51 years old now. And the subtle thing that I've heard from a lot of people at the Yellowhead was because it's such a tight facility, because the roof is so low, you are right on top of the action. And when you're in the arena watching it, that is great. You can hear every little nuance, every little thing that's said by the curlers. When you're in a bigger facility like the Keystone Center or like Stride Place, you're far away from it. You don't feel that same connection. So that was a real plus for Neepawa, I thought, personally.
Yeah, it was interesting because even at the opening ceremonies, different rinks had their fan base there, obviously, or maybe there was people who were cheering for 2 or 3 rinks, and it was quite interesting. You know, they introduced the rink, people, names that are announced and everything, and then there'd be a big cheer, you know, from the crowd. You were right there. There was some discussion originally too about whether the glass would come out or not. But they left it in, fortunately, because that's a lot of work to take that glass out and put it back in.
Yeah.
But the other thing is that the way the heater system is set up in the Yellowhead, because they're a little lower than they used to be, and a little further in than they used to be, and with the higher glass, the heat doesn't spill out onto the ice near as bad. And so that makes for easier to keep the ice in proper shape if the heat isn't coming down on the ice surface.
That's right. Although, and you'll find it in this week's edition of the Banner Press, I did discuss with Scott some of the challenges that they did run into, and the heat was a part of that. Not just the interior heat, but it was so warm during the week outside. It was unseasonably warm weather that had hit Neepawa and the surrounding area. So that little change as well subtly tweaks the way the ice plays. But for the most part, the people that were involved, both in terms of Curl Manitoba and our local representation, Tom Lissaway and the rest of the staff at the Yellowhead, were able to work together to sort of make things work as best they could. So overall, even though it was a lot of time, a lot of effort, from the bits and pieces I've heard, it was very well received.
Every rink in the country, especially before the days of the artificial ice, would be dreading the Bonspiel thaw, and it still affected it a little bit here. In the old days with the rinks with only natural ice there, the roof would start dripping and you'd have to dodge the little lumps on the on the ice with the rock. I've seen a rock jump 3 inches in the air back in the old days. Not here.
That's right, and especially not during the final. We're going to skip over to the next story. We got multiple stories in this week's edition on the Viterra Curling Championship. This one is on our sports section and focuses on the final itself between Team Dunstone, Matt Dunstone, Reid Carruthers. Reid Carruthers multiple times has won. Dunstone has won multiple times as a member of a team. I believe this is his first time as the skip for a team that has been able to come in and win the provincials. And it was quite the dramatic game itself. Hopefully you were able to see it either live and in person at the Yellowhead Center, or you were able to watch it right here on NAC TV. They were able to broadcast a lot of the draws live, which is great to see. And if you didn't watch it, well, shame on you. You missed some amazing action, especially that final. These two, it was like, maybe I'll age myself a bit here, Ken. It was like Ali Frazier in a boxing ring, that little give and take, back and forth, punch, counter punch. It was really, if you're into curling and you like to see that type of nuance, it had it in spades.
Oh, for sure. It was a classic game. Some people are still questioning the strategy that may have cost the Carruthers rink the game, but I'm sure he knows more about what he's doing than we do. So I think too, NACT, I'm not sure, I didn't check, NACTV might replay some of those games too, I don't know. So I'll have to check that.
You're going to have to keep an eye on our schedule and NACTV's schedule to see if that is happening, because if you haven't seen it, you have to see it for yourself. It was incredible. Carruthers' team, for the most part, I thought had played a near flawless game. Not perfect, but error-free. Dunstone's team made a few errors. If I remember correctly, they had a couple ends where they had points stolen from them. In fact, going into the 10th, they were trailing Carruthers by 2 points with the hammer. Now, Ken mentioned it there about he wasn't sure about Carruthers' game plan on there. I would have thought as well, just clear out. Keep clearing out the rings. But no, there was a log jam of spoiler alert, just in case you haven't seen it yet, there was a log jam of rocks in there. And then when a member of Carruthers' team burned one of the rocks that was going to be used to sort of block what Dunstone was trying to do, come around and get into the forefoot, that changed things a little bit. But even before that, I thought, Ken, I couldn't understand the mindset of jamming up the rings like that. I would have figured just keep clearing them out.
Yeah, you'd wonder. I mean, I obviously I never curled much and I haven't curled in years, but it's interesting. If you get a chance to see it on NEC TV, be sure to watch it. It's fun.
Oh, yeah. And it was a great ending. So if you do get a chance, check it out on NEC TV. But if you'd just like to read about it, you can check it out in this week's edition of the Neepawa Banner Press. All right, let's get into some municipal concerns. Recent council meeting occurred. There were 2 items of note I thought of interest that I wanted to very specifically bring to you in the paper and right here on the story behind the stories. First one of those is something that has been talked about in the past. Concerns about a crosswalk in Neepawa, specifically located at Hospital and Mountain, over by essentially, well, the schools, the middle school and the high school. Representative Brad Mummery, yep, he brought forward his concerns, and he should know something about the concerns there because he serves as a bus driver during the school year, so he sees it with his own eyes. He sees the issues on that crosswalk, the delays that occur because of all the backed up traffic that happens there. But even aside from that, we can wait a minute or two if we have to. But what we can't do, what we shouldn't do, is put youth, children's, kids' lives in danger. And he has said himself, he has seen situations where that crosswalk, they haven't been paying attention or something's been going on and children have been put in danger. Thank goodness nothing has occurred in that way, shape, or form yet. But he says we've just been lucky. Let me go and give you essentially a little bit of a quote here. I'm going to give you one quote Brad put out there in regard to that and just let you ruminate on that. Let me see here. I see the potential for disaster.
What he wrote.
What?
You're like me, you can't remember what you wrote.
Yeah. And this is quoting Brad. I see the potential for disaster twice daily during the week in my duties as a bus driver. I feel as though I must be proactive and exercise my due diligence in trying to correct the situation before any type of accident does occur. In his mindset, it's not a case of if, it's a case of when. Yeah. So the unfortunate thing about that, though, Ken, is as well, as much as the town and the school board might want to change it, they don't get the final say, do they?
No, and the thing is, when I was mayor twice, came up against this kind of thing, and you'd go to the highways department, and if they didn't want to deal with it, they would say, oh, the town is the traffic authority within the town limits. Okay, fine, well, we'll put a stop sign up or do this or do that. But if they want to meddle in it, oh, no, you can't do that. It's very inconsistent, and it's very infuriating for the municipal officials and for the engineer and everything else. If you haven't seen the spot we're talking about, the street, Hospital Street runs east and west, merges with a T with Mountain Avenue. The school buses come off of Hospital Street and almost all of them, if not all of them, turn south to go out to Highway 16 to deliver the students. The crosswalk is on the south side of the intersection. The school bus has to go through the crosswalk, every day on the trip home. And it's absolute insanity. The crosswalk should be on the north side of Hospital, and the students could cross there without interfering at all with the buses pulling out. And furthermore, if you think about it, they would have far better visibility from the bit of traffic that comes from the north. They'd be fully visible to the north heading south traffic than they are now, because the buses going through the crosswalk, a kid could come scooting out and get hit by a car coming from the north. And so it's insanity the way it is. And Brad has held his tongue to a certain extent, at least publicly, on this, but he's very upset about it. And all the bus drivers are, and the school is too, and the town is too, and the highways department apparently won't move on it. Well, if somebody gets hurt or killed, then there'll be, all hell will break loose, but it'll be their fault, and they should shape up and do something about it. That's pretty harsh, but I think that's the absolute truth.
That's right. And again, it's one of those things. It's a former provincial road, so it does fall under provincial jurisdiction. It's the bureaucracy of government in that way, which is unfortunate, because we don't want to lose a life to have to make the change, as Ken said. But interaction is going on right now. Representation with the town of Neepawa has done their... I just want to make sure, just for those of you out there that might think, well, why don't they just change it? They would if they could. They would if they had the authority. They're in agreement, in essence, with Brad, with the school division, with all the drivers. But unfortunately, it's not just a case of getting a wrench, taking down some signs, and spray painting a little further north down the road. Unfortunately, provincial government bureaucracy is getting in the way, and I hope it doesn't get in the way for too much longer.
Well, there's other issues, and I won't go into them now, but there's other issues where the town has been hampered by the province in being able to handle traffic. Speed zones is another classic one, and anyway, hopefully it'll change. But it's just very, very frustrating for everybody involved here.
That's right. Now you can find that story inside the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. It's on page 8 of this week's edition. Also on page 8 of this week's paper, another story from Town Council about a request for an expansion of a tree planting program. This came forward, the presenter, former Mayor Adrian Devereux. Adrian Devereux, very much a, what's the word for someone who believes in the value and viability of trees? Horticulturalist or something like that? Is that, I might be misremembering, but...
environmentalist?
Well, no, he said very specifically, it's not like I'm a tree lover, but I see the value of trees in a community, and I see the importance of having something like that. And he's correct in that estimation, quite honestly. I mean, in the story, I cite a block of First Street as a good example where you have those tree canopies, and during the summer and into the fall, it's unbelievable. It's beautiful. I got to drive home underneath it all the time, and during the spring and summer, it's unbelievable. Another good example of it, I didn't cite it in the story, is heading out towards the museum, just on Hamilton there.
Yeah.
Yep. So he believes that we should be doing a little bit more to help encourage residents here in Neepawa to plant more trees. So he brought that project forward, offered a few suggestions to council about it. Council does see the value of it. They're going to evaluate it, and I think, personally, I think that's a good idea. But again, you got to be careful, because you don't want somebody planting 40 trees in one place and then the sewer system's gone, and then that's a whole different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the town actually is most famous for the old elm trees, and those old elm trees were planted about 1905.
Okay, yeah.
So they're 115 years old, some of those trees, and some of the cottonwoods are just about as old. So it is certainly time to replace some of those trees, and every year we lose a few to Dutch elm disease, and you'll see those dreaded orange painted strips around the tree, and you go, the other one's leaving.
Yeah.
And we've lost several in front of the post office and lots of places where we've lost trees, and they need to be replaced.
Yep. This type of idea, I think, is a very good one, and it will be explored, as I said, a little bit further. Not going to give too much more away. I hope that you'll check it out in the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press and see for yourself. All right. It seems like page 8 is the most interesting page in the paper this week, because we've got one more we're going to talk about right here. I'm skipping ahead a little bit since we're on page 8 anyway, Ken.
Oh, yes.
And we're going to talk about congratulations to a local Neepawa resident who won big in the lottery. An unexpected win as well. Well, pretty much when you play the lottery, any win is a little unexpected.
Yeah.
But Wayne, and a person, perhaps if you're a consistent viewer of NAC TV, you're probably very familiar with.
At least with his voice.
Oh, yes. Congratulations to Wayne Jacobson, who ended up winning a scratcher ticket on a crossword and ended up winning big. It's $250,000. Originally, he thought it was only $10,000. He had to bring it in, and they said, no, you got a little bit more than that. So an unexpected surprise. Congratulations to Wayne. This was a few weeks ago because with Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries, you've got to go through a whole process. They ask you a bunch of questions. Is any of your family related? Does any of your family have anything to do with lotteries and all this and all that? Just to make sure everything's legit. And everything was legit. So then eventually they signed off the check and handed it to him. And this is the one thing I'd hate, but can myself. Although I don't really gamble in any way, shape, or form, so I don't really need to worry about it all that much. But as part of the winning process, you will be required to do a press release or something like this. And I would hate that because, again, I would hate for all of a sudden a bunch of cousins I've never heard of to start showing up and saying, hey, can I borrow some money?
Wayne might have expanded his family tree over the last week or so here.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Don't you worry about it, Cousin Wayne, because I'll look after you. I'll make sure those guys and those gals don't get involved there. So.
Well, I got a little inside information. To quote Wayne's wife, it's all spent.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I have an idea where they put some of it, but that's fine.
No, but congratulations on that. And considering it was about maybe within the last 6 or 7 months, we also had a winner of $250,000 in the, if I remember correctly, I think it was the Lotto Max.
Yes.
That they had won. The name of the individual eludes me right now, but it's kind of interesting to see two big winners like that in such a small community so close to each other.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to get off page 8 now, and we're going to shuffle along over to page 2. Story Casper Warehan was able to pick up for us this week. Touchwood Park artists were able to show off their work for the first time publicly, and they're doing it down at Brews Brothers Bistro. Very wonderful that local business is so supportive of local endeavors, and this one as well. They've got all the pictures up around there, and they had that sort of official unveiling within the last week or so.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, and good on Mark and his family there for opening up the walls of their place for local artists. This isn't the first exhibit they've had. Before I go, I should explain, you probably heard me in the background here coughing a little bit. I don't have COVID. I'm not going to give Eoin COVID at least. This aggravating little cough is because I take some medication. They say, oh, it'll make you cough. And I think, well, let's get off that medication as quick as we can. And so I did. But it takes 30 days to recover from it.
Oh, okay.
So hopefully,
yeah,
no more coughing soon.
Well, COVID, no.
Yeah.
COVID's, if you've read the CBC recently, Nona-virus is the new one. It's like the flu amped up to 11. But,
well, I shouldn't laugh. It is serious, but it is. You have to laugh sometimes. Yeah, no, this Touchwood Park artist is a tremendous show there, and I think a great deal of credit to the artists and to the restaurant as well, and it's well worth going in there and having a look. It's food's good too, but anyway, it's a nice combination of a local business and local talent.
Oh yeah. Yeah, most definitely. We got time, so we're going to go through a couple other things here as well. One of them is, as you have most likely seen, if you're a consistent person who goes through the paper, we have our hockey sort of center spreads that are going on right now. Last week, we had a page committed to Neepawa farmers who are starting their playoff push. And if you get a chance, head down to the Yellowhead Center and check out their games against the McGregor Wild. Hopefully you will be able to see that yourself, and hopefully they will have an extended run in the playoffs. Next up, the Neepawa Titans, whose season is still ongoing. So we do have their player sort of headshots, profiles, all in this week's paper, the center spread. It's an annual tradition that we do each and every year for the Farmers, the Titans, and we're going to have the Tigers coming up in a couple weeks as well. Well, again, Ken, the Titans and all that, there's a lot of time and effort that goes in behind the scenes, behind that, to get that organized. So,
Yeah, it all falls on you. You got to get the pictures, and Diane has to do the ads, and then Joel does the selling, and it all works together. And yes, we do charge for these, and yes, we do make money, and that's how this paper stays where it is by advertising, because we're not a subscription-based paper. So these extra little things we do to recognize the players on the 3 teams, and to recognize our community business supporters, and we hope that you'll support the various teams and the businesses as well, because they put out a lot of time and effort and money, both the teams and the businesses, to help making Neepawa what it is. And I could wax eloquent from that for a while, because, man, Neepawa, you're talking about 50 years ago when the Yellowhead was built, opened in 1972, and I remember that. I was there when they opened it. And it has changed a lot. Mm-hmm. It's held an awful lot of events, and the town has changed. I think we were only about 31 or 3,200 people back then, and now we're probably 6,000. Very, very close to 6,000 if we're not 6,000 people now. So
most likely, yes.
the community is able to stay in the position it's in because of the support of the volunteers, like you're talking about on the curling, and about the businesses that support the various events, as well as the support for the newspaper. So.
That's right. And hopefully you'll support the team. Their season is the regular season, hopefully not their season, but their regular season is starting to draw to a close. There's going to be fewer and fewer home games, but there are a few coming up. Depending on when you watch this show, these ones might have already passed. If not, hopefully you'll go down the 17th. They're going to be hosting the Winnipeg Blues at the Yellowhead Center, and then a makeup game on the 19th of February against those same Winnipeg Blues. And then a week later, it's going to be on the 24th of February. They're going to have the Portage Terriers, the #1 team in the Manitoba Junior Hockey League, coming into the Yellowhead Center to play. These are going to be some huge games. The Titans are still in playoff contention. It's a tough road, but they're still in contention right now in a very difficult and very competitive Western Division. So hopefully you'll go down there and you'll support them in some way, shape, or form, because we're going to have their hockey cards are going to be coming out soon. Maybe you'll purchase one of those, or one of the team magazines. That's coming out, going to be at the next game against the Blues. So, a heck of a lot going on for the Titans.
Yeah, as there is across the whole coverage area, and so I'm not sure how much time we've got left, but I'll just put in a little plug here that if you have advertising, we would certainly like to hear from you. If you have news stories, we'd certainly like to hear from you. If you have pictures that you want to submit, we would certainly like to hear from you. The problem is that we can't be everywhere, and our coverage area is well over 100 miles north to south and almost 80 miles east to west. So send us your stuff, and we'll certainly consider putting it in the paper with gratitude.
That's right. Good example for that is the game against Winnipeg Blues is Friday night, and I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be actually in Gladstone covering an event, a meeting that's going on. Not going to tease it here, but you're going to have to check out next week's edition of the Banner Press to see it. Again, as Ken said, if you have any story suggestions or ideas or any pictures from any events, we would love to have them. You can send them to us via news@neepawabanner.com. Anything sports related, you can send to sports@neepawabanner.com, or you can give us a call at 476-3401. We would appreciate any suggestions or anything like that. We get a couple people every once in a while calling us up, sort of calling us out on stuff, and we'll accept that too. We might mutter a little bit, but we'll accept that too. But once again, we wouldn't be here unless you were here, and we always appreciate that. We appreciate you. Thank you very much. So again, Ken, good to have you in here this week with Casper away today.
Good to be here.
All right, and it's good for you to be here as well, right here on NAC TV, right here with the stories behind the stories. Have yourself another good week.